Hello, team, and welcome to episode 5 when I say that I saw it in English class. Team, welcome. I'm at a different location today, but this is the first class of our tense review. And we're going to start with the past. I know most people might expect us to start with the present, but I have found that this comparison between the past simple and the past continuous is an excellent way for us to see the rest of these tenses and grammar points we will encounter throughout the year. So you can leave this class telling me the difference between the past simple and the past continuous. Boom, you got it. So, team, this is an interesting week in the United States, and it is Groundhog Day on February 2nd. And Groundhog Day is one of those very American traditions, and I say very American because I cannot imagine anywhere outside the United States where they will celebrate this. But we have a groundhog, and we find a picture of him right here. This is Puxatawny Phil, and he is a magical groundhog. And the story is that if he sees his shadow and he runs back inside his hole, you're going to get more winter. I think it's 40 more days of winter. But if he doesn't see his shadow and stays outside, that means that spring has arrived, no more winter. But while we're using that as a reference, you can watch this video and learn a little bit more. I want you to start by telling me a little story. I was doing this when this happened. I was driving when I saw a groundhog. I was playing soccer when the telephone rang. And this model is something that I want you to take from this class. This was happening when this happened. It's an excellent reference and it will help you out later. So I always like the number 3. It seems to be a good number for my students to remember. So we will be dividing this into 3 comparisons. And the first one is the use. With the past simple, we use it for completed actions in the past, often at a specific time. You should have an idea of when it happened. So, for example, if I say, did you watch the game? And I know that you like a specific team, I'm probably talking about last night's game. If we're having a conversation about when I lived in New York, I don't need to keep saying when I lived in New York, because it's understood. In a few weeks, we will be comparing the past simple with the present perfect, which is why I'm mentioning this. But for now, remember that it is finished. It is a completed action in the past. And you should have an idea of when it happened. The past continuous. Again, it is finished, but the attention of the person speaking and listening is in the middle of the action in progress in the past. I was watching a movie. They were playing soccer. And if I say, let me tell you a story. I was driving, and I kind of stop and go, and what? You wait for me to finish. So remember, it's about an action in progress in the past and often interrupted by another action. I was watching a movie when you called. Now, the function, what are they for? Whenever you hear the word simple, I want you to think of a fact. I lived in New York. Cool. I played soccer. Understood. I watched that movie. Got it. You transmit a fact, and it's focused on the action being completed. It's done. Now, with the past continuous, since we're focusing on the middle or the process of the action, we often kind of imagine a gift in our mind. If I say I was driving, you imagine me behind the wheel. If I say, we were studying, this is the image that you will have. I was playing soccer, trying to score a goal. So sometimes the duration, but often it's the process. I would say more often it's the process that we are focusing on. Now, with the form. Oh, and this point here, I think it's great. I always ask my students to tell me stories. I kind of like to imagine past continuous as where we're setting a scene. Imagine that you open, it's the first scene of a movie, and the main character is driving, or in this case in the past, was driving, when they see a deer. So we have this kind of setting a scene to say what happens next, the next fact. Now, let me go to the form. So this is something I've always hated teaching in English. To make the past, you verb plus ed. Walk, walked. Play, played. Watch, watched. But this only works for about 50% of verbs. Go becomes went. They don't even have one letter in common. So I do not, I'm not the person who made these rules, but I do need to share them to you. So yes, we add them to ed for regular verbs. Now, the negative. Remember, English is lazy. It's like a cat. It does not want to move. So as soon as you see this word right here, didn't, two things. One, it's negative. There's a not. But two, it's in the past. So you don't need to do anything to the verb. Didn't go, didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't watch, didn't do. You will never hear didn't played, didn't plays, didn't play. You will never have a variation. So didn't with the base form of the verb. And the interrogative with the questions, it'll be did. And you'll have the subject before it. So I know this is different than in Portuguese, where we have here the groundhog predicted six more weeks. It's not 40 days. 6 more weeks of winter. And when you hear that, we instantly know it's a statement. In Portuguese, we can just change our voice. The groundhog predicted 6 more weeks of winter, and it becomes a question. So with English, we signal this with this did. Okay, this is a signal for a question, and B, it's a signal in the past, since the simple form does not have an auxiliary verb, which is the opposite of the past continuous, where you always have an auxiliary verb. It'll either be was or were. Sometimes my students will mix these up. What I like to say is, when in doubt, if it has an are in the present, you are, we are, they are, it'll be were in the past. You were, we were, they were. And then the other two are was, which are the he, she, it, and I. But you will always have either was or were with the verb in the ing form. Playing, doing. Sometimes there's one spelling rule or other, but if you remember to add the ing sound, you'll be fine. With the negative, since we have an auxiliary, just include the not behind it. You can say it in its extensive form, was not, but it sounds a little bit official. She was not in school today. It's like, all right, calm down. It sounds serious. So you will usually hear the contracted form. Again, since we always have an auxiliary verb, was or were, you will be starting a question with them in front of the subject. The groundhog was the groundhog for a question. Now we're going to be playing a little game. It's called Mulberry Street. I was a big Dr. Seuss fan when I was a kid, and this is Dr. Seuss's first book. It's about a little boy. His name is Marco, and his father says, pay attention on your way home. If it was today, he'd say, get off your phone. But he tells Marco to pay attention, to keep his head up, to see what happens on his way home. And the only thing that Marco sees is a cart with a horse. And he thinks, that's not a very good story. So he decides to increase it. And then he has an Eskimo, and then it's a tiger pulling an Eskimo. And then at the end, it becomes a ridiculously huge story. And that is your challenge. We're going to be practicing this form. I was walking down Mulberry Street when I saw. If you're playing with your friend in your city, you can switch Mulberry Street for your favorite avenue or street in your city. That is fine. And the next person will change, they'll add, they'll enhance something to the story. So first one person might say, I was walking down Mulberry Street when I saw a dog. And player two might say, I was walking down Mulberry Street when I saw a dog playing the saxophone. And the next person might say, I was walking down Mulberry Street when I saw a gang of dogs playing various instruments. So just keep making the story more and more absurd until you can't continue. All right? And remember, what we're doing here is practicing our past simple and past continuous forms. Your challenge, at the beginning of class, I asked you guys to tell me a story your summer. You can use the same story, or you can use another one. I want you to enhance it, to embellish it, to exaggerate it a little bit, and come back with an awesome fisherman-style story. For my more advanced students, I really like this podcast, the Morgan Housel podcast, and he mentions 3 points, 3 pieces of information that people would go crazy to have. And I'm not going to give any spoilers, but it was one of the most dense podcasts, one of the densest podcasts I have heard in a while. You get like I think it's less than 15 minutes and really big ideas, great stuff to talk about. Listen to it, send it to your study buddy, discuss it. It's going to be some amazing life practice, not even English practice. And let me pick a good conversation starter. Which one shall I pick? I'm going to go with this one, polemic one. What are your thoughts about book banning? I am against book banning. I'm against any attempt to impede freedom of speech. And I think we need to see what people have to say so that we can tell people not to listen to them, not to read what they're writing. But as soon as you try to cover it up, it becomes an even bigger problem. So while I think there are many things that should not be said or written, that we cannot be the ones policing this. It is our job. It's part of the human experience to see things that we disagree with, that we dislike, and say, I don't believe in this. So I am against book banning in general. So guys, Willy Wonka, if you haven't seen the movie, I do recommend it. The new Wonka movie. The actor, I don't know his name, did an amazing job. Better than Johnny Depp and better than, I forget the first actor's name. But if you have a kid, especially if you like musicals, watch it. And that is it. That is what I have for you. I hope you guys are enjoying it, and I will see you in class.